Hey there guys, Dune Part 2 feels like the big event of the year, and it's only March, smashing its opening weekend numbers and impressing critics and audiences. I will be talking spoilers in this video, so you have been warned. After the fall of the House Atreides, Paul and Lady Jessica join the Fremen and plot their attack at House Harkonnen, and the Emperor who is responsible for Duke Leto's death, and many others. Paul wants to learn the ways of the people so he can fight beside them. Part 2 is literally blowing people away, and unfortunately, I'm just not one of them. But I did enjoy it though. On a technical level, this film is so unbelievably epic. Epic in the scale, it's all shot on location, which is something that most studio films should do and use less green screen. The locations are fantastic. The way they use lighting in this film is out of this world. Those must have been some long, grueling, tiring days filming to capture those stunning shots. Cinematography and visuals are world class. It's already won Oscars in my opinion for those categories. It'll be hard to find another film that can match how well shot Dune is for this coming year. If you saw my review of Dune Part 1, you'll know how much I loved it. I loved the introduction of the story and the characters, and the way it all developed was brilliantly done. It's a hard task for Denis Villeneuve to keep the momentum from that. How Part 1 ended was fantastic, and how Part 2 begins is really good as well. However, I do feel like the well-built characters became victims to the plot. I feel like the characters I enjoyed so much in the first film got let down by weak writing, especially when it comes to the antagonists. Stellan Skarsgård's Baron Harkonnen was such a force in Part 1, however, he's just not effective in Part 2. He's barely in the film, and the way he's killed off by Paul is a big letdown. His death and the Fremen taking over was way too easy and becomes a bit anticlimactic. Batista's Glossu, another weak part of the story. He doesn't get any development at all and is killed by Gornit way too easily, literally within seconds. Christopher Walken was barely given anything to work with of the Emperor, to be honest. A really disappointing character who didn't do anything to drive the story forward. The only saving grace was Austin Butler. He was fantastic as Freud Rothor. He looked like a badass, he had great physicality, and he fought great too. He left me really wanting more, so I was a bit disappointed to see him killed off at the end. I felt like they could have done something really special with this character. When Fade challenges Paul to a duel, Gurney begs Paul to let him fight him. Gurney knows how good of a fighter Paul is and the power he's attained, but he still sees him as his student and he feels like a father figure to him. I feel like for the story, Gorney should have fought. Gorney would lose and Paul could exact revenge in Part 3. I feel like that would have been a better, more emotional ending. Maybe Austin Butler just signed on for one film and that was it. Another disappointing character for me, and this is going to be a bit controversial, is Javier Bardem's Stiegler. He's the leader of the Fremen and I loved how he was introduced at the end of Part 1, but he's a bit too much in this and it becomes a bit comical. He's all about the prophecy of the Messiah coming, believing Paul to be it. He's a bit loony in this, to be honest. Rather than the calm, composed leader I thought he'd be, as it's written, became a bit too much. I don't think the intention was to make it funny, but that's what it ended up being. And there is a few memes floating about that proves it really. Also, I was really looking forward to the love story between Paul and Shani. Paul has finally met the girl of his dreams, but I felt disappointed with it all. As good of actors Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya are, I don't feel like they have enough chemistry or great dialogue to work with to make me feel like they'd die for each other. "I'll love you for as long as I breathe" was a great line used in the trailer. However, when it's delivered in a film, I didn't really feel much. Their romance was just not as believable for me. And then a minute later after he's saying that, he pretty much proposes to Princess Aurelian, played by Florence Pugh, minutes later. Zendaya for me really didn't shine in this film. Her character sees what's going wrong with Paul and she feels like her people are being brainwashed. In the trailer you see her stand up and shout, "This prophecy is what they used to enslave us." I was really expecting that to be an emotional moment in the film, but before she can say any more, Gurney drags her down and basically says, "Be quiet." It is great to see Gurney back though. Loved what they did with his character in Part 1, running into battle, and now he's back into Paul's life, and I like how Lady Jessica has become a reverend mother. Her thoughts are now compromised by the water from the worms. and his influences to framing with the prophecy. The development of Paul is done really well too. He's becoming stronger, hell-bent on revenge for his father's death, and his thoughts are now compromised also by the water too. The action sequences are fantastic and shot so well. There's a few hand-to-hand combat fights and gunfights. The final showdown in the film between Paul and Freyd was brilliant. Paul is outmatched for the most part, but wins when Freyd gets overconfident. Part 2 is such a gorgeous film to look at. Filming took place in Hungary, Italy and Abu Dhabi. It just so looks beautiful and rich. Shot entirely with the Arri Alexa LF by Greg Fraser, who also shot Part 1. He does an exceptional job and will probably win another Oscar next year. Absolutely brilliant cinematography, as well as sound design, production, and the visuals are fantastic. Hans Zimmer nailing the soundtrack as well, possibly some of his best work, and I felt some Gladiator vibes from it in certain moments. I'm going to give Dune Part 2 a 7 out of 10. A technically brilliant epic film with huge scope, a really entertaining experience that is made for the biggest screen possible. However, it's let down by weaker character development than its predecessor. I really wanted to love it, but it just missed the mark from a writing sense for me. I definitely will try and see it again though, as the second viewing might change my mind. It was just missing the sentiments that the first film had. The scene between Leto and Paul talking about the future of possibly being leader, that was fantastic, and this was one of the scenes that made me feel like that in Part 2. Let me know your thoughts on Dune Part 2. Film is art, it's all subjective at the end of the day. Take care.